Shout out Galdem.
Shout out
They made
Galdem.
me. But I think I literally found them on Facebook and I was just like, this is really cool. And they were kind of still based in Bristol, like tiny organisation. And I like sent them a message on Facebook like, keep doing you girls, like this is amazing. And Liv, who was the founder, like just got back to me on email and was like, oh, would you like to write for us? And like I'd always kind of been like, maybe I'll be a writer, like maybe I'll go into like the BBC or something, like do something serious or politics. And my parents had always said, you know, you always say you want to be a writer, but you've never written anything. So I'd written like one blog post that I then sent to Liv, and I was like, this is the piece I wrote when Prince died, and I was really emotional about it. Like, this is my only sample. I didn't even know it was a sample at the time. It was just like on WordPress. And she was like, yeah, perfect. I'll hook you up with Antonia, who's a music editor. And then I wrote a couple of pieces for them while I was still studying.
Do you know normally, like, when you get an email, I always assume I didn't get a job and I got an email, because normally they call you saying you got a job. So they'd emailed me, and that email was sitting in my ear. I was like, I'm not opening this because I didn't get it, so I'm not going to open this. And I opened it like 2 weeks later, and it said you'd got the job. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was on holiday. Like, I was just like, I'm so sorry, blah, 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 blah. And I remember even when I told my editor at So Feminine that I was leaving, and she was so happy for me. Because it was like, everybody wanted to work at BuzzFeed in that place. Like, everybody was so gassed about it. Like, it was just like, that was the peak of where you wanted to be at that time. And genuinely, the first year there was the best job I'd ever had.
Really?
It was amazing. It was everything you thought BuzzFeed was, like free food, just like creative license to kind of write whatever it is that you wanted to do. And I had rankings so much more on the outside world. People that used to email before that used to ignore me now saw my BuzzFeed signature, and that was a thing. And like BuzzFeed and those kind of workplaces, they have a really good way of making you feel like you're a part of this family.
Right.
So you feel so proud to work there, right? You feel so proud to work there. You feel like you're part of the family. You see like what it gets you on the outside world. What it also does is that it makes you feel like you can never go.
Yep.
Because it's like, who am I if I don't have this name? Who am I if I don't have this status of being like, I work at BuzzFeed and that's what my whole thing is. And I made amazing friends at BuzzFeed, friends I'm still friends with like till this day as well. And it just got to a point, again, I was crying in the disabled toilet.
Is it because there's more space in the disabled toilet?
Yeah, you know, like the other people won't hear you.
Yeah, like every minute of every day, pretty much. And like, it's getting more and more intense, I think. I think it gets more intense when you do something new, especially. And so directing at the moment is like a whole new mental battle for me. And I think it's interesting to kind of get back to that, because it's how I felt definitely when I was at a label, when I didn't know what a DSP was. And when I was like writing the first profile, like it's been that way. But I think there was a little stretch where perhaps I was comfortable and I was like not coasting, but like not necessarily growing rapidly. And now to be back in the stage of like researching things, like getting off the call and you're like, okay, I have 10 words I need to Google and like I need to look at all of this stuff. It's exhausting. Like it's actually very exhausting to doubt yourself every minute of every day.
Are you affected by imposter syndrome?
I was for the longest time, and I'm probably a little bit still am, but I feel like of recent I've been like, even if I'm a fraud, so what? Like, even if I don't deserve it, so what?
It's the best answer.
Do you know what I mean? Like, even if I am, yeah, who's going to beat me? Like, as in, so what?
Best answer. So, okay, in realistic terms, for someone who has imposter syndrome and don't have your perspective, like,
yeah, but that has to be the only way you navigate it, because there is no way to make yourself, because when you have imposter syndrome, you're aware of how hard you've worked. You're aware of your background. You're aware of what you studied. You're aware of what you read. You're aware of how you got here. You know your story. But yet you're in that space, you're still thinking like, I'm not deserving of this space, right? Yeah. And that's been my thing for the longest time. I feel like, especially if you're from a working class background, if you happen to be black, if you happen to be a woman, there's this need to be like, you feel like success only comes after struggle. And if you manage to get somewhere with that too much struggle, you're like, yo, this doesn't feel legit. Like, because you're so used to be like, no, it had to be really, really hard. So you cannot, even though you know your stories, you still get there and still feel undeserving and still feel like you shouldn't be there. And the only way you can deal with that is to be like, okay, even if I'm not, so what? I'm here.
For writing, it's played a really big role. Like, Twitter alone is like responsible for at least 20% of my career, I think. Just in terms of like being a place to present views that then could get you a commission, like literally it was giving me work. It's the reason I found the day's internship. It's the reason that I have certain resources, that I know certain rates, that people have found me, that I found other writers, other editors. So I'd say that's probably the biggest role that technology has played in my career.
I feel like right now my season is to get the fuck off the internet. I am doing everything in my power.
Do you know how ironic that is? We have this conversation all the time, but how ironic it is that you have built a following off the back of technology and the internet, and you're like, I'm out of it. I want to get out of it.
I need to become Michaela Cole.
What is it the most that irks you about the internet?
It's an awful place.
People can be awful.
And it's not even like people saying bad things. I just like, everybody has to admit we're all addicted to it. Including myself. We are all addicted to it. It's not okay that I wake up and I go onto this thing. Yeah. It's not okay that like someone announces something and I feel a way about myself and about my achievements because of this person who I don't know. And just because that's virtue, that's how life is. People have to say about the things that they do, and so I can't blame them for it. Of course. It's not okay that it just takes up so much of my time. And I think good or bad, I don't think any of us are meant to know what people think about us this often. Good or bad.
And so directly.
Good or bad. We shouldn't be so aware of people's versions of us in that. Like, I just think it's I don't know how healthy I think it is.
I think it's just like thinking laterally about how you make money and enjoy. Like, I think we've got very specific or set rules on like doing things for enjoyment or doing things for financial benefits. And I think the more that we continue to kind of blur those lines and like figure out how to be commercially viable with the passion projects and vice versa, how to like make sure that we are still spiritually like fed from the things that pay well. I think the more that we can do that, like the better off we'll all be in terms of just like being well-rounded people who get to not have to sacrifice either being rich or either being comfortable or being able to support yourself with like, you know, being happy in your career. So I think the advice I would give is just like keep challenging those kinds of boundaries and finding new ways to like innovate in how you like express yourself that way. And that thing of just like, just don't pay attention to what anyone else does. Like be internally motivated, not externally.
I've got this big thing where I see a lot of content creators and they do this thing where it's like, what do you guys want to see from me? I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I think, do what it is that you want to do and your audience will find you. Like, I think there's this big need to be like, especially when you've got the audience, like, okay, what do they want from me sort of thing. And I think when you're not doing something that you want to do, like all of my favourite content creator things that I'm like, nah, I can tell she's enjoying this. I can tell she believes this. Like, she's having a good time here. This feels like hers. And I feel like we live in, and it's such a waste, right? We live in such a society of like little niche groups. There's not one way to be anything anymore. There's so many, so it's just like, you're going to find somewhere you fit in. And that's one thing podcasting has taught me. There is a podcast just about like biscuits and they do numbers. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's like, it's such a like little, like, there is like little niche things that you can be into. And I think that's the thing, like, it's so cliche, right? But just do what it is that you want to do and your audience will find you. Like, I get it, right? There's this thing to be like, oh, see, that thing is doing well. Let me try that thing. Yeah. But it's so transparent when you're not into it.
I hear that.
Like, the longer you is that you're able to do what it is that you're in this thing for longer. Because you're your own captain. This is what I want to do. Rather than being like, because you fit in and then that goes out of trend, you have to find the next thing that's now trendy, you have to do that again, sort of thing. And there is like a big thing in like, I understand that it feels like a numbers game, but there was something in having a core. Just having a core, even if it's just like 250 people, that just mess with everything you do. That is better than someone that's got 1 million followers and it has 30 people that like it. Like, the ratio is different.
Yeah.
You just find your core.